Have you ever noticed how some people simply can't handle your indifference? How they become increasingly desperate when you stop reacting? Subscribe now if you want to discover the most devastating psychological weapon against narcissists and manipulators, a technique that psychology calls grey rock, and that can literally save your mental sanity. Let me tell you something. There's a type of person who feeds on your emotional reactions like a vampire feeds on blood. I'm talking about narcissists, manipulators, toxic people who need to see you reacting to feel powerful. And most people try to combat this with confrontation, with explanations, with attempts to make the person understand. And then they wonder why they remain trapped in this infernal cycle. But here's the truth. No one tells you. You don't need to beat this person at their own game. You need to stop playing completely. And there's a specific psychological technique for this, something that manipulators simply cannot stand. Psychologists call it grey rock, the grey stone method. And today, you're going to discover why this works better than any confrontation ever would. Imagine a grey stone in the middle of a garden. No vibrant color, no movement, nothing that draws attention. You walk past it and don't even register that it exists. Now imagine that you become that stone when you're around someone toxic. No visible emotion, no drama, no fuel to feed the toxicity. Seems too simple to work, doesn't it? But the psychology behind it is devastatingly effective. Let's understand what really happens in the mind of a narcissist or manipulator. These people don't necessarily want to see you happy or unhappy. They want to see you reacting. The reaction is proof that they have power over you. When you cry, scream, explain yourself, defend yourself, you're delivering exactly what they want. Confirmation that they matter, that they have impact, that they control your emotions. But here's what changed everything when I understood it. The absence of reaction isn't passivity. It's strategy. It's you consciously withdrawing the fuel that feeds the fire of toxicity. And for someone who needs this fuel to exist emotionally, this is more destructive than any confrontation. The grey rock method works because you basically become boring. Purposefully, strategically boring. Short responses, monosyllabic when possible. Zero drama, zero visible emotion, zero personal information. You transform into something so uninteresting that the toxic person simply loses interest. Think about it. What happens when a predator can no longer hunt in a certain territory? They leave to look for easier prey. And that's exactly what happens with emotional manipulators when you stop providing the reactions they seek. They get frustrated, try to escalate the conflict, try to provoke you even more. But if you maintain the grey rock posture, eventually they give up because you've stopped being a viable source of narcissistic supply. But here's the part that most people get completely wrong. Grey rock isn't about being rude or hostile. It's not about giving the cold shoulder or silent treatment. That's still emotional reaction, still fuel. Grey rock is about being polite but completely uninteresting. It's about responding without engaging. It's the difference between, I don't want to talk to you, and, I see. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine someone toxic sends you a message loaded with drama, full of accusations, trying to provoke you. The grey rock response would be something like, okay, understood, period. No explanations, no defenses, no counterattacks, just neutral acknowledgement of the message and nothing more. But the truth is, this can sound brutal when you realize what's really happening. You're basically telling that person, you're not interesting enough to deserve my emotional energy. And for a narcissist, this is devastating. Because narcissists need attention like you need air. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative attention, any reaction works. But indifference, boredom, that they can't process. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. The narcissistic brain literally depends on constant external validation. Studies show that these people have a pathological need to feel they cause emotional impact on others. When you remove that validation, when you refuse to provide the drama, their brain goes into panic mode. It's like cutting off the oxygen supply. Here's something few people understand. Your unshakable calm is more devastating than 1,000 angry words. because anger is still connection. Hatred is still an emotional bond. But boredom, disinterest, that's complete nullification. It's you saying without words, you have no power here. Now let's talk about how to implement this in practice, because theory without application is worthless. First, you need to understand that gray rock isn't a permanent solution for all relationships. It's a survival technique for when you're stuck in a situation with someone toxic and you can't simply disappear completely. Maybe it's a co-worker, a family member, an ex with whom you share custody of children. Implementation starts with your verbal responses. All communication should be factual, brief, and without emotion. They ask how your day was? Normal. Don't give details, don't share emotions, don't offer hooks for conversation. They try to provoke you? Could be. No defending, no attacking, no justifying. Your body language also needs to follow. No dramatic facial expressions, no exaggerated gestures, neutral posture, minimal but polite eye contact, monotone voice. You're becoming the most uninteresting person in the world to that specific individual. But here's what nobody prepares you for. It's going to be uncomfortable at first. Your whole nature will scream at you to explain yourself, defend yourself, prove your point. Especially if you're someone naturally empathetic or who was conditioned to please others. You'll feel like you're being rude, like you're being cruel. But you're not. You're protecting yourself, and here comes the really powerful part. While you're being gray rock to the toxic person, you maintain your vitality and emotion for the people who truly matter. Gray rock isn't about becoming emotionally dead. It's about being selective with who gets access to your emotions. It's control, not suppression. Most people never discover this, but there's a predictable phase when you start using gray rock. At first, the toxic person will escalate. They'll try to provoke you even more. They'll create bigger dramas. They'll make more absurd accusations. This isn't a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that it's working. They're desperate for your reaction because they've realized they've lost control. Think of it like an addict being cut off from their drug. There's a withdrawal period where they'll do anything to get one more dose. But if you maintain firmness, if you continue being that boring and predictable gray rock, eventually they give up. Because you've stopped being a reliable source of what they need. The Stoics already knew this 2,000 years ago, even without giving the technique a specific name. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Gray rock is exactly that, absolute control over your reactions, regardless of external provocations. But here's something crucial that can completely change your perspective. Gray rock isn't revenge. It's not about punishing the other person. It's about protection. It's about preserving your mental peace and your emotional energy. When you understand this, the technique stops being about the other person and becomes about you. And then it becomes infinitely more powerful. There's a fundamental difference between gray rock and stonewalling. Stonewalling is when you deliberately ignore someone as a form of punishment or control. That's toxic. Gray rock is when you respond politely but without providing emotional fuel. That's protection. The difference lies in intention and execution. Here's what happens over time. You start to notice that your mental peace no longer depends on that toxic person's actions. They can be having a dramatic day, creating emotional storms, making scenes. And you're there, firm as a stone, completely untouched. Not because you don't care about anything, but because you chose not to care about that. And you know what's really fascinating? Sometimes when you maintain gray rock consistently, the toxic person eventually reveals their true nature to other people too. Because when you stop reacting, they need to escalate more and more to try to get a response. And then other people start to see their behavior for what it really is. But let's talk about the real challenges, because I'm not going to romanticize this. Gray rock requires extraordinary mental discipline, especially in the first days and weeks. You'll want to break. You'll want to scream, "Why don't you understand? I just want peace." But that would be exactly the reaction they're looking for. The trick is to constantly remember, every time you maintain calm, Every time you respond with strategic boredom instead of emotion, you're reinforcing your own mental fortress. You're training your brain not to react automatically to provocations. And this is a skill that will serve you far beyond this specific situation. There's a phrase that helped me a lot. Not my circus, not my monkeys. When someone tries to drag you into drama, you mentally repeat this. The drama is theirs. The chaos is theirs. You don't need to participate. You can observe from afar, like gray rock, completely impassive. Here's something that completely changes the game when you understand it. Gray rock isn't about making the toxic person change. It's about changing your own response. Because you don't control their behavior, but you absolutely control your own reactions. And when you realize this power, when you truly internalize it, you become unshakable. The freedom that comes from this is indescribable. You stop living in constant anxiety, waiting for the next explosion, the next provocation, the next drama. Because you know that no matter what comes, you have a strategy. You have gray rock. You have your internal gray stone. And here's the devastating ending for whoever tried to manipulate you. While they're spending energy trying to provoke you, you're using that same energy to build your best life. They get stuck in the cycle of trying to get your attention while you move forward, grow, evolve. No drama, no confrontation, just silent progress. Time will pass. And one day you'll look back and realize that that person who once had so much power over your emotions is now just irrelevant background noise in your life. Not because you hate them, not because you beat them in some battle, but because you simply stopped giving them what they needed, your reaction. Gray rock is proof that sometimes the most powerful act isn't to fight. It's to refuse to enter the ring. It's to be so completely uninteresting to the toxic person that they simply lose interest and go looking for drama elsewhere. So here's my challenge for you. Identify a person or situation in your life where you could apply gray rock. It doesn't have to be something extreme. It can just be a test. Try responding with strategic boredom instead of emotion. Try being the gray rock and observe what happens. Observe how it changes the dynamic. Observe how it changes you. Because at the end of the day, gray rock isn't just a technique for dealing with toxic people. It's a path to mental strengthening. It's you taking absolute control over your emotional reactions. It's you consciously deciding who deserves access to your emotions and who doesn't. And that, my friend, is true power. Not the power to control others, but the supreme power to control yourself. If you want more content about mental strengthening and practical techniques like this, subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and leave in the comments what was the biggest provocation you've ever managed to completely ignore. Let's exchange experiences. Until the next video.